This week on the BackTable podcast.
At least I don't want to, do what I'm doing just as a job. You don't want to go into work and, take care of your few patients, come home, set their follow-ups. I mean, that's amazing and that needs to be done and that's what you've trained for. But part of the career part of it, the impact part of it, kind of like the upstream part of it is, finding those opportunities within that system to make it better. And I think that's the part that truly is engaging. And whether that's, MD, JD, MD, MBA, all the other sort of, additional kind of disciplines that are out there. I think that's what's really sort of exciting about it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the BackTable Innovation Podcast, where you will hear stories from physician entrepreneurs who are helping to drive healthcare forward through medtech innovation. Today we've got another special episode. We already covered getting an MBA as a physician, or why you would, on a prior episode with Roger Tomihama and Anissa Majid. Please go back and catch that episode if you're interested or looking into getting an MBA. We're going to do a part 2 today. I have Roger Tomihama back on the show and a new guest, Raj Khalsa. We're all three in Southern California. And guys, thank you so much for joining me on a Saturday morning.
Thanks for having us.
No, thanks for having us. Yeah, excited to be here again.
Yeah, so this time, now that Roger's done with his EMBA program at Wharton, which for those who didn't catch the prior episode, he has finished the program. We're going to get into, sort of the pros and cons of that program, how it went, but also the reason I'm bringing Raj on is he completed the Quantic Executive MBA, which is an online MBA program, which I'm currently enrolled in. I'm about 6 months in a 14-month program. And I do want to talk a little bit about the length and maybe what, how that's relevant as well to maybe the quality of the program. But first, guys, I like to start off everything with introductions. Roger, we'll start with you. Just tell the audience where you're at briefly, just clinically, and then, tell us a little bit about the EMBA program, how it went at Wharton's.
Yeah, well, Aaron, again, thank you for having me, and I'm great to be on the show again. I'm really excited. I am Dr. Roger Tomihama. I completed the Executive MBA at Wharton, just graduated this past year in May for 2 years, and currently the chair of radiology and radiation oncology at the VA Long Beach. It was a great program. It was basically a 2-year program designed for working professionals who want to get an MBA without stepping away from their careers. And we had classes that were structured twice a month on the weekends, either in Philadelphia or San Francisco. Each class ran usually a Friday morning to Saturday evening, with lectures, group discussions, team projects, etc. The program was kind of divided over the 2 years into 6 terms. The first year was focused on the core curriculum, probably similar to you guys' programs in, finance, accounting, operations, strategy. And then the second year was focused really on electives. So a lot of people took a lot more classes in finance and management or entrepreneurship, and you could really tailor your second year to kind of whatever goals you wanted to achieve. And it was great. For me, I consider myself like a financial illiterate. Like I went into this, I'm not a money guy. And, I feel like in the course of the program, some of my eyes have been open to sort of like the realities of the real world and how business world that I kind of been ignoring being in healthcare and physician and just not doing any of that. And so, it was really eye-opening for me personally and professionally to learn more about how to navigate the business realm and to see the pitfalls and the landscape a little better. And I think for me it was great.
Thanks, Roger. Just real quick on definitions, because some people may not be aware. I wasn't aware of this. And just a quick plug for your YouTube channel where you covered a lot of this stuff, how to decide on an MBA program and so forth. What is the difference between a regular MBA and an executive MBA, which is what we've all done?
Yeah. So excellent question. So the regular MBA is typically in person on campus, usually for people in their mid-20s, early 20s. So usually guys who are going into investment banking or finance or something would go work for Goldman's for 2 years, and then they get their experience, and then they go to an MBA, and they really just solidify their education, and also get the credentials needed to take on a real business role, just a job working at Goldman's or another investment bank or whatever. And so it's sort of like the steps that need to be done. People don't need to do that to advance in their career, but it is sort of like almost like just sort of a check mark that they need for these boxes. So usually 20 to 30-year-olds, maybe 2 years of, or mid-20s, 2 or 3 years of experience, and they use it as springboard to get a better finance job or management consulting. Executive MBA is meant for mid-career professionals, usually 30s to 50. Usually people who are already advanced in their career to mid-level management or higher, or started a business or whatever, and just need the fundamental tools to really optimize and scale their business. And so we had a lot of people from, who mid-career, mid-management, mid to upper level management in big tech, all finance companies, and they were just either checking the box or they're making a pivot maybe. So either checking the box so they can reach the upper management C-suite levels, or to start their own gig, and they gotta like navigating entrepreneurship is already super challenging. And if you don't have a landscape of how to navigate those things, it's quite difficult. So that's kind of the demographics and the differences. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for defining that. Raj, so welcome to the show. I've talked a lot about, our MBAs, our Quantic. I think I was partially inspired by you and Vinu, who had already done the program and told me sort of the pros of Quantic. I think we've had similar, I would say, feedback around the program. But first, just like introduce yourself. Tell us how you came upon the Quantic program and how you decided on it. And tell the audience a little bit about it, like what the difference is from a regular MBA.
Sure, yeah. So thanks for having me, Raj Khalsa, and interventional radiologist based in SoCal. So I am a few years out of training. I started off in an academic job. Actually, where Roger's chair of radiology right now is Long Beach VA for a year, and then transitioned to private practice, which was the best job I ever had for 5-6 years. And just recently transitioned over to academics again, closer to home. So the last couple of months I'm over at Harbor UCLA, where I'm the residency program director now. So just a little bit of clinical background. And then as far as Quantic or the MBA sort of pathway or journey, I've been interested in sort of the business aspect of medicine for some time, because it's always, this, nebulous kind of thing that's in the background, and you tend to you're kind of actively encouraged to stay in your lane during your training, and you sort of, realize there's this whole, big world out there and you know nothing about, and becomes more and more apparent as you get outside of training. So, it wasn't for, that reason or any other specific reason I would say that I got interested in MBA. It was just more, I didn't really have a plan. It was more sort of for learning. The reason I ended up choosing Quantic versus the formal MBA programs was just, convenience. That's sort of what it got down to. So Quantic is an online app-based program. It's compressed. So it's about 13, 14 months, depending on sort of what, and they have several programs a year, and it's completely remote. So you don't have to have a single meeting in person outside of, wherever you are. And they have folks all over the world that join the program. And, they have folks that, if you go on their website, they'll, people applied from, these many universities and HBS and INSEAD in France and, all these other programs that they all apply to as well. And I think the number one reason is convenience, and you don't have to sort of, travel. So that was basically the main reason. It's sort of the way you consume information, kind of the modern day, it's all, if I have to look up something, I'll go to, just snippets of information here and there, various, channels or means to sort of consume media. So it really fits your lifestyle, and that's pretty much the only reason why I sort of chose it. Especially my practice to be closer to home and closer to family. And I think for me, spending weekends away and all this stuff just to satisfy intellectual curiosity just wasn't a good enough reason to spend 150 grand in 2-3 years. So from that standpoint, it was fantastic, and that comes with limitations, obviously, and you sort of go into it with full, eyes wide open, and it met all my expectations. And there's things that are limited about it, and there's things that can be improved. But from what I wanted out of it, it was perfect for me. And so it was a 13-month program I finished in March of 24, so earlier this year.
Yeah. I mean, I echo what you said in terms of, that's how I decided. So I did this episode, which I don't know if you listened to, Raj, but with Roger and Anissa, and we were talking about, why you should do an MBA, and if so, how to choose a program. And, I listened to both of them, and Roger was just starting the Wharton program. And really, when I looked at the time that I would have to spend away I don't know where I was going to fit it in. And then we were living abroad, and I wasn't going to do, the famous, programs in Paris or anything like that, because we weren't sure how long we were going to stay over there. So when I talked to you, Raj, I talked to Vinu Badlamudi, I talked to Adam Tanius, who is a vascular surgeon who's been on the show, who did the Quantic program. The more people I kept realizing, well, a lot of doctors actually have done this program. There must be something there, right? And so you can actually go onto the website, quantic.edu, I think it is, or we'll throw it in the show notes. You can audit a few courses and just get an idea of it. And the software is pretty slick, I got to admit. That is one upside of it. You can learn, it's like basically micro learning on the go. You fit your learning into the nooks and crannies of your life, right? You're waiting in line somewhere. I can knock out a lesson real quick, right? That is the definite upside of it. And before we get into, and that's why I chose it, and the price was nice. As a physician, for some reason, we got scholarships. I think all of us got some kind of scholarship being physicians applying for it.
Wait, what?
And a scholarship? I'm kidding.
Not me. I wasn't that smart either.
I think that's for select physicians.
It's not like we got tested. It was just like, oh, you're a physician and you have graduated med school and gone on to do these things. They're like, okay, you're committed, so we want you as part of these classes. And so they give you a discount on the tuition.
It can't be the price. I mean, it's like a fraction of the cost, and it's like, most of it's a tax write-off too, and I think it was like 10 grand or under that, from what I remember.
Yeah. And like you said, like I put it on my company credit card, and it was a write-off,
that's
right?
great.
I mean, that was a big upside as well. So price, software, flexibility, convenience, that sort of thing. However, there's like virtually no networking part of it. And so that's why I wanted to get into with you, Roger. Like, how is that? I remember you posting, you were in Dubai, you're doing all this crazy, these cool networking parties and stuff. Like, how was that for you? Was that a big, valid part of it? Because we talked about that with Anissa.
Yeah. Looking back on it, like I said, personally and professionally, it's just really transformative, the knowledge and everything. But it was very helpful, like in a lot of things, and had a lot of great experiences. Like I said, I was lacking in financial literacy from the get-go, and trying to understand leadership role, administrative roles in healthcare, and was what I was trying to achieve was just trying to bridge the disconnect between, for me, physician and administrators or government. And there's like doctors are speaking one languages, and I think admin people are speaking another, or insurance companies are speaking another, and kind of wanted to kind of delve into the understanding of these real, how business professionals think. So, like I said, before I went to Wharton, I felt like there was a disconnect. And through the program, I began to understand their thought processes, their motivations, their goals, the way they thought helped bridge, give me some insight to help bridge what I call, the doctor administrator disconnect, like where, we often have different approaches to solving problems. Like as a physicians, we're more patient-centric, kind of looking at the healthcare from the patient's perspective. And whereas, there is definitely another side that needs to be navigated and brought together, which is the financial, administrative, and operational side of these dynamics. And I thought it was just helpful for understanding that. I mean, I would say just like you guys, I've learned the same materials you guys. We probably use the same finance books, or I noticed you guys are on the app, but I would say what you guys learned is probably exactly the same thing. I went through the standard finance accounting textbooks, that they've been using for the last 20 years. So I want to say that I don't think I've learned anything that is any different from you guys, but I think there were some advantages with the in-person program, like we had a lot of, Wharton was really good for having a lot of these global immersion courses, which are 1-week courses that you spend in different countries learning different aspects of business in that particular country. So for instance, I went to Sweden and Romania to learn about universal healthcare, studying their healthcare systems, trying to do a compare and contrast to what we do here in the U.S. I went to Dubai to learn finance, and then Argentina to learn about emerging markets and other things. And it was actually really helpful to understand we learned the theoretical aspects in class about finance and VC funding, startups, and all that stuff. But then when you go to different environments and see it sort of in real life, it really brings you back to reality of, okay, there's theoretical business and then there's real business. And, it just really was helpful in that too. But that being said, I agree with you guys about the problems or the disadvantages of in-person, right? Like there's a lot of challenges with time commitment. And I had, it was managing my work, my family. The school situation was really difficult. For instance, to attend the classes, I had to cut my clinical workload to 0.9 FTE, which meant taking a pay cut, losing vacation time. I had to really coordinate with my department at multiple levels, to ensure patient care and my call schedules were covered while attending classes and other things. And then on the personal side, for my family, my wife and kids, like my wife really stepped up, and she's a full-time vascular surgeon. She's the chair of research at the VA at Loma Linda. So she's got a really busy enough career, and, we have 2 young children. And so, on Saturdays when they have soccer games and gymnastics, I'm nowhere to be found, and so, it's definitely took a toll. Like she was really glad when it was done. And the cost is, again, it's not, I thought med school was expensive, but I was awoken to the cost of what these in-person, executive MBA programs. And, it was, our program was like $220,000. So that's really no joke. That's like a condo somewhere. And I was in the former military, so I had the GI Bill. So actually it sponsored my tuition and fees. So I was really one of the fortunate ones to not have to pay anything out of pocket. But, I would say half my classmates were paying either 50% or 100%. I would say only 20, maybe 10 to 20% of the people were fully funded from their employers. And then you got another 30 to 40% that were maybe partially funded up to, maybe a quarter or half of the tuition. And then there's a good amount of people that were paying their own thing. So yeah, obviously, some good aspects, some not so good aspects, and you just got to figure out the balance.
Sounds like you had some amazing experiences though, with all the, the places that you went. Were there inspiring connections as well that you made in these places, like maybe lifelong friends or people that you still keep up with in network building that happened?
Yeah, it was a week long. So, and we basically go to place and we got to hear speakers speak. I did get an opportunity to connect with some of because I was in healthcare, when I went to the finance or blockchain, I went to one in blockchain too in Lisbon. Obviously I'm not a finance guy or crypto guy or anything else. So I had very little ability to relate to them. But so when we met with some of the healthcare startups in Sweden and Romania, one guy was doing, actually in radiology, he was trying to develop AI platform for radiology, similar to Viz AI and some of these other startups in the US. And so we've connected a couple times. Interesting though, the better thing was that I got to connect with so what happens when you go to these courses, they're actually mixed in with the full-time MBA students and the online Wharton MBA students. So you get to just meet a lot of other different individuals in the Wharton system. And so, a lot of the full-time MBAs were some of those we met who were in the healthcare were, going into the VC healthcare fund. And, so it was interesting. You do make some connections and, it's good. I think it's very helpful. And then the Wharton Alumni Network is also very good. And they have just like most schools, they have some kind of alumni network. So you can meet people from different industries in your local area. And so, yeah.
Well, that was Anissa's point. I think she even said your network is your net worth last time. And she was like, that's how I justify what I paid, for Kellogg. It's just, I've got an amazing network now, which I personally look, I'm only a third of the way in. So far the networking, like I said, has been close to nil. But Raj, can you care to, any input on your end? You completed the program in its entirety. Did you take any advantage of any network opportunities with Quantic?
Yeah, no, I went to Quantic specifically to avoid that, the travel and, the meetups and this and that. I mean, that was the sort of the sole purpose of, the self-learning at home and, doing it on sort of call hours and when the kids are asleep and all that stuff. So, but there's no doubt. I mean, that is a very, very, very rich experience. The one that Roger, you had at Wharton and traveling different places, there's no replacement for that. the folks that, come through Quantic are very, very impressive. You have your group projects and your capstone project, and I had the country lead of Apple on my team, and a senior software design architect for Novo Nordisk. They were just fantastic people, and sort of for the projects, you kind of sign up on these sheets, and the finance folks try to sort of gravitate to each other, and the healthcare folks try to gravitate to each other. And my kind of one sort of rule for myself for the course was to not do that. I see enough healthcare people on a daily basis. I just don't need more.
Yeah.
And so it was really nice. Yeah. That was the whole purpose of, I wasn't looking for immersion, but it was really nice to kind of get that point of view. Real estate developers were just, developing just everything outside of, like the healthcare space and stuff. But that's what I really sort of, wanted in the little networking I wanted, and it was fantastic. But yeah, they have opportunities for that. So they'll send you, they'll blast you with these meetups here and there. So you can definitely, it's available, and they do their best. But I just kind of mark that as spam, sort of on my end.
I think they're mostly in LA, actually, because the ones that we've had one in San Diego, and it was actually just the other night. And again, it was like 7 to 9. It's right during dinner time with the fam, and I'm like, do I want to get in the car and drive for 30 minutes to go have some beers with people that I may never...
Traveling to LA at that time is like basically traveling to Argentina, basically.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and me, as I'm an introvert by nature, and like, even with the projects, my wife's like, you need to have partners for your project. You have to go, because you have the option of doing them solo, Roger. I did my first one solo, and it was pretty painful, and I did my second one with a team, and it was way better. But it is extra effort to coordinate schedules. You're dealing with people that are around, sometimes around the world, so you try to align, like what Roger's saying. Like, my whole thing is like, okay, let me try and align with people on the West Coast. But I think it's good advice what you said, Roger, is like, try and meet up with people that are outside your industry, because all of our social activities, all of our friends are physicians for the most part, right? It's pretty crazy, actually, if you think about it, how throughout training you've made all these lifelong friends, but how many friends do you have outside of medicine? For us, it's few.
Yeah, we've kind of made like a conscious effort on kind of our end to not do that, just because it gets so stale, and you sort of, it's
talk about
most people talk about like work issues, and just no, like, so. Yeah, I think that part of it, the forced interaction with folks outside your kind of immediate realm, I think is fantastic. And if you can talk the talk, it only kind of increases your social circle and your network and all that. So yeah, I think there's limitations to that on the Quantic side for sure.
Even the Wharton has the fully online program. They actually say the exact same thing. It's so it's not unique to any online program. They've said the same thing. Hey, can we get more networking? But then they get the same question. Well, should have gone to the in person, but they want to stay at home, and so it's sort of like it's always I would say that's not an unusual critique of that process. I would say, yeah. And
I'm sure like the in-person learning is more engaging too. Like we do like these, the thing I was telling you, Aaron, like these weekly sort of, quote unquote golf meetups we call it Daddy Shack. Yeah. It's a bunch of dads in the area. By golf, I mean Top Golf, and by play, I mean just stay at the bar and hang out, on Thursday night football. But, half those guys are like Harvard, HBS guys, and, there's some medicine guys and some other industries and stuff. And, I told them about Quantic, they just sort of laughed me off. We still joke about it, like you bunch of your Quantic hat and your sweatshirt and stuff. But those guys got taught, by Michael Porter of like the Porter's Five Forces. It's like getting taught by, Bratton Helms or Kaufman when you're reading his book or something, right? So it's I don't know whether that matters or that's enriching. You definitely remember that, it's good for a golf talk. But so there is definitely that. Like, you don't get the Quantic sort of, your outline book is basically like a bunch of PDFs that people put together. I happen to learn that way as my primary resource anyways, because, I just process information in snippets, and it's a way better in bursts and stuff, rather than, spending a weekend reading a textbook. So it was perfect for me, but it's definitely not as enriching as you would have at like HBS or Wharton or Columbia and everything. You know, my parents were like, "What are you doing, man? Like,
Yeah.
why are you going to Quantic?" And
I would echo this, actually say the same thing. Like I don't know about you guys, but when I was in med school, I was asleep half the time. Like 30 minutes and I'm good, and then after that I'm dozing and I'm daydreaming, and I have to go back after to learn everything. And I would say like it was actually pretty similar for the in-person. Like I would do my best to, but I'm like you, I can only learn in bursts and snippets, and I have only so I would say learning in person is not more efficient. You know, I don't think it is. Like I actually think it just depends on the person. You know, so I wouldn't say it like even though I was in person, I was still like probably like you. I need to digest after, read it, go over it, you know, write it down, and so I want to and get back to the point. We're all learning the same information. Like I don't know, you know, whether you go to Harvard or Ford or wherever. Like you know, we all did probably the Harvard cases, you know, to do their case studies, and I studied the same finance book that I think Kellogg and everybody else uses, and I'm sure you guys use the same material. Like it's based on the same material, so I wouldn't say there's any disadvantage of, you know, what we learn. I think it's all the same personally.
I think to me, it's very similar to language, right? And it kind of goes back to why the three of us are all learning this is the business side is like another language, right? Just like outsiders don't know the language of medicine. We have to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, but we have to put things in layman's terms to get an idea across or a disease process across. You know, business people have to do that with us. They, you know, when they're talking about a balance sheet, even something simple in their minds, they're like, well, how do you not understand this? And that was my incentive. It's like, I want to learn that language. And so premium, in-person is definitely a premium because it's just like language. I was trying to learn French, right? So there's Duolingo, which is basically like Quantic, right? I can learn on the go on my phone and I can learn the vocabulary and stuff. But then there's actually talking to real people in France. That to me is the in-person MBA. That is what you're getting. You're going and having these conversations with people in industry. We're not doing that. We're just learning it via Duolingo, basically. And I'm okay with that because, again, I just want to get the foundational knowledge and hear enough people talking about it where, okay, now I can get these concepts and I can maybe directly apply them to my startup. And I think you feel the same way, Raj. It's just like, as a startup entrepreneur, like I just want to know the foundational language so that I can then learn by experience, right?
Yeah, 100%. I like physicians in general, generally smart people, you know, is MBA necessary to be successful in healthcare? But like, absolutely not. Running a business, starting a business, you guys can do. And Aaron, you're a great example of a business you built already with BackTable is a clear example of how physicians can do it, you know, and I think the foundation of knowledge is essential to help you maybe take it to the next level, scale that business, take significant leadership roles, bridge the gap between clinical and government or administrative worlds. And I think, you know, once we all get the foundational vocabulary of finance, VC funding, acquisitions, exit strategies, you know, then you can really help, right, not be at a deficiency to the business people because they're doing M&As all the time and they're getting new rounds of funding and exits, and so to them that's all like everything, and we're like kindergarten started playing like you know, and so you know obviously I think that knowledge that you guys will that we all acquire will be essential for scaling, growing, you know, taking it to the next level.
Yeah, being able to directly apply it, right? Like you, Roger, are able to go back and you're in a leadership role in your clinical position and you can directly apply it. And now you can be at the table and have those conversations. I think that's also the other main reason to do it is for anybody who's out there considering is like, we all reach this sort of mid-career kind of stagnation. It's like, what more can I be doing? You know, I could go out and open my own practice, or maybe you want to just advance yourself in your private practice group or in your academic center. I think an MBA is a great way to do that because, again, it gets you thinking about healthcare in a different way. And again, being able to have those conversations at a professional level versus being sort of like the outsider looking in, right? And so I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, it's sort of like, I kind of use the analogy of the early MBAs, or I guess Quantic for an example, it's kind of like being in med school and then just sort of, you know, getting rotations in all the different fields. And then, if you're interested in, you sort of do residency for their specialization in an area that, you want to apply that kind of foundational knowledge to. Yeah, I did undergrad in engineering, but it was biomedical, which is like the weakest, it's like sort of engineering light, we used to call it. I can't build anything, but you can sort of know who to get, right? For this type of project, I'm gonna need mechie, electrical, maybe some computer science. For this, I need industrial systems, So that's sort of what the baseline, it kind of unlocks a way of thinking. And I've noticed that some people either have it and some people sort of are a little bit more reticent, right? So if you're, very persistent, you're sort of an outside the box thinker, you for sure do not need an MBA. There's a lot of examples of folks that, will make things happen just by the force of nature that they carry within them, right? So you definitely don't need that. I mean, a perfect example is my mentor in private practice, which we had on the show before, was Avi, Aaron, and he's force of nature with that stuff. Being with him, having breakfast and lunch with him for 5-6 years was like getting a street MBA, So, some people just sort of have it and they don't need that additional sort of organized knowledge. I think for people like me who are completely clearly not like that, I think it's a little bit of formalized, organized information sort of unlocks that way of thinking in whatever you want to apply it to. And it's not just academic medicine or kind of extracurricular business interests that you have. It's even like these behavioral heuristics you learn of, the sort of marketing psychology you learn of that you can apply with kids. You can apply with kind of like family situations and stuff. The MBA is like probably the most useful degree for just the daily kind of transactional nature of life, I feel like. Because at the end of the day, literally everything you do is a transaction, right? Like whether it's a monetary thing, it's an emotional transaction, sort of social happiness is can be measured in transactions too. I think that's what sort of that kind of thinking is sort of unlocked with a little bit of formal education in that space, and you apply it to whatever you want. So that was a big reason. I mean, then some of the areas I learned about, I really got into. So it's the whole marketing is fascinating. I mean, if you look into like the neuroscience of marketing, behavioral psychology, I mean, absolutely fascinating. And then you sort of realize, all these social media companies, all, you travel down the road, the reason why these ads are placed the way they are, the positioning of the letters with each other, the color scheme, the angle of where you look at it, like literally everything is to get your eye to look at it for that microsecond. And then for, like your whatever type 1, type 2 parts of your brain to fire. And that's how dialed in these guys are. And if you're not aware of that, then you're sort of the product, right? But if you're aware of that, you kind of apply that to whatever you want to, right? And so I think that part was fascinating. Other things like accounting, that's like, it's a necessity. And, I am kind of talk to my accountant a little bit better when looking at balance sheets and financial statements. Yeah, but would I want to do that myself? Absolutely not. You couldn't pay me enough.
You must be a fan of the show Mad Men, then, I would think.
Oh my gosh!
You just said, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I got to go back and watch it again.
I know. I just got back into it. Yeah, Bowles and I were just talking about it before. Yeah. I know. It's so fast. It is really fascinating, the whole marketing side. And go back to what you were saying about Mahmoud Razavi. It's like he's like that. He's like that musician who can hear a song and replay it, right? Just that natural talent. Whereas for me to learn the piano, I have to have that structured learning, sit down and learn, how to play a song and read the notes. It's the same, and it goes back to the analogy of language too. My wife is really good at language. I'm not, this the way people are wired. But I do think that for those of us who we have a natural interest in it, we want to learn more. And also just what you were saying about, being a med student, you do learn how to be resourceful. All of a sudden now, okay, this is what urology does. This is what OBGYN does, way better than the layperson. And you're now a medical insider. You're no longer a medical outsider, but you're not a trained physician at the same time, right? So that is the level I feel like I'm at. Like now I kind of know, okay, this is what VC does. This is what private equity does. I had no idea before, right? That I think that's what you explained foundational very well, like in that, like at least as a parallel for us in medicine.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of in line with a lot of these other guys in different industries too, right? I mean, just to use Razavi an example, he'll try a new catheter or a new device, And, within the first case, you'd be like, okay, this is what it feels like. This is what the industry standard is. This is what it needs to be. Okay, by the way, this is where it fits into the overall portfolio. This is where the gaps in, the overall space are. These are the companies. And it's sort of like that triple threat where you have, clinical, technical expertise, and then you have the hands, right? So some people have the hands, some people don't. So you'll sort of dissect and kind of deconstruct that device into all sort of its parts. And then beyond that, which, it's sorely missing in medicine, is how that sort of fits into the overall kind of development, kind of, life cycle of a product, how that fits into the business strategy, all that. So like the guy like that has it. A guy like me doesn't, right? So I mean, there's always that aspirational sort of thing to get to. On the business side of things, and if you have that Razavi-esque person in, say, M&A or, whatever industry you have, they look at a company and they could be like, okay, their earnings per share is this, their, all these different metrics. And then that quick snapshot for them allows them to pour like, market mover type money into, this deal. And, so it's sort of the field that you're in. And, again, some people just have that knack, some people don't, and some people need formal education. And I think that intro to sort of open your eyes to that stuff that's the most exciting part for me, because then you sort of realize, okay, I really like this, or I just hate it with a passion. Then you can kind of do with that, whatever you want. And part of that is just figuring that out and knowing that's out there, which a lot of us don't. I mean, you don't want to be doing, medicine day in and day out. It just becomes really stale, like you were saying, Aaron. Like you need your 80%, and then you need that 20% of whatever it is you're interested in. Yeah, you just have to have that sort of engagement.
100%, yeah.
Speaking of that, Roger, are you still posting the videos on YouTube?
I haven't, while the program was going on, I thought I had this grand plan I was going to do a video. I'm going to interview all these people. I'm going to post it. And I did like 3, and then I posted 1, and it went to the back burner given the other work that was required. But I'm hoping to resume eventually, trying to put more, if it's helpful for people. I mean, I guess it was really just, I wanted to make sure that information was simplified for people to get it. That's all, wasn't meant for anything else. But yeah, and I really wanted to do exactly what you did with this podcast is I wanted to maybe do a compare and contrast between programs and like, hey, what was first year like exactly? And then how's second year versus, and my goal is to eventually get back to that.
I think it is really helpful. I think that, however we can, because, look at all the, as we get into this, we meet more and more people who are like either considering it or they've done it or they wish they could have done it differently. I think that it is very useful. So, and I thought that, I personally, when I was trying to decide, like I found your videos very helpful just in terms of like, should I do this, right? And now that you guys have both been through it, I think we all agree, like having an MBA does give you an edge up. Do you think it's like for a doc who wants to say become CMO of a healthcare organization or something like that, do you feel like an MBA is like a necessity, a requirement for anybody who's like aspiring to work up the ranks in an organization?
Yeah, for me, like I said, I think if you're gonna be doing like a startup or scaling a business, probably, right, I would think you'd need that foundational knowledge, the context needed to know who to call, at least to get an idea of who can direct you in the right directions. Because like I said, once we get into, if you're going to approach VC investors, it's like swimming with the sharks. You want to like be able to navigate yourself. I think obviously, someone like Razavi could probably do a CMO job, no problem. Run a hospital, no problem. He probably has natural
because of
instincts.
experience.
Yeah, and
natural
his
intuition.
Probably business intellect. I think in general, most physicians could benefit from an MBA because half the job is really not. I mean, I don't know, but I felt like 90% of the hard part of our job was not taking care of patients. It was all the charting, billing, navigating work relationships and all those other soft skills kind of things that are not accounted, then I think that's more of what I think every physician could benefit from personally.
Yeah. Raj, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the MBA is just all about kind of finding opportunities and, sort of unlocking the way of thinking to take advantage of those. So from that standpoint, if you look at it, then physicians probably will benefit. I don't think it's essential. But and maybe as a little bit of a counterpoint to what Roger was saying, I think in large organizations, if you want to sort of go to the next level, it probably makes sense to have that formal education, the MBA. And that was a lot of the folks in our cohort. There was, people that were at large, companies, and they kind of wanted to get promoted and stuff, and sort of the standard, EMBA pathway. I think for a startup, the demands of a startup are so unique that you kind of have to wear multiple hats and go across multiple roles. There's a ton of kind of on-the-job fire hose type learning. It's not really necessary, It's you learn the stuff. I mean, a startup is essentially like your street MBA, and you're forced to learn just out of necessity. So I think it's helpful to try to get an MBA and then apply it to a startup. I think probably doing it for the purposes of a startup, I don't know if that's completely needed or useful. It probably helps, but there's plenty of very successful folks without an MBA. I think having a medicine degree or having a subspecialty medicine degree like, interventional radiology or whatever it is, and practice, that's probably way more useful and practical at reducing. So if you go to medical devices like a product life cycle, you can probably, clean a year off and just, trying to get to KOLs. And, the standard thing, you sort of see is, companies, they'll have a bunch of different, folks that do these types of procedures and sort of get opinions from them, and then, try to build a device that's sort of in their, what they think is sort of in their representation of what a device should be, and then kind of go back and forth. And, that inefficient way, it just takes a long time. If you were to do that yourself, I mean, you're literally talking to yourself, and, the game of telephone is within your mind, and you can cut that product life cycle just by virtue of that significantly. And then if you just sort of know, product market fit and some of these other things that are sort of important, and you kind of work market down rather than, product, up, I think that's what the MBA kind of helps with. That's, some people would say that's just common sense. Some people would say, no, you need sort of those tools. So again, I think the answer short is no, you don't need an MBA absolutely to be a doctor, to do all these things, but it helps. I think for me, who is kind of not the best sort of, intrinsically motivated person to try to, go out and all that, I think a structured learning is better. But, for someone that's not that, those force of nature type folks, they're absolutely not a requirement. They'll figure it out themselves.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what you said. I thank you for clarifying exactly what I meant to say about that. I think I completely agree. Like the doing a startup can be done without an MBA, and I think you're exactly right with that. I also wanted to add about the healthcare administration. Like, I think you're right about that. I give myself the example. Like, I don't think having the MBA title, I don't think helps in a lot of situations. However, if you're going for a leadership position, like I was speaking to the person who hired me, and, she was going over my CV, said, oh yeah, Wharton MBA. She said it really shot you to the top of the list. So even though like just having the MBA title, just really, even though I don't think it's unnecessary to be successful as a higher up in the leadership chain in the administration of a hospital, I think that little kick will help you out to check the box to, give you pseudo qualifications. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. It's empowering, right? The knowledge is empowering, the degree is empowering. And I think it's all about timing, to kind of push back a little bit on what you said, Raj, in terms of, startup. I think that you're going to learn by fire. Being a startup founder, you have to learn this stuff. But again, using the language analogy, you're not going to learn the proper grammar and stuff like that if you're just learning street language, right? And so just having a little bit, like for me, it was all about timing. Like I would not have been as receptive to all this like 5 years ago when we were 10 years ago, 8 years ago when we were first starting BackTable. But now I know where my shortcomings are. And so it's like I know the exact knowledge gaps that I want to fill. Whereas before I didn't know all that. I didn't have that self-awareness. So I think, again, going back to being like sort of mid-career helps. And so anybody that's mid-career, kind of like in our generation, I think that like it's super empowering, just to have the information and then you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your career.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a fine balance as it is with everything, right? I mean, the knowing too much is sometimes, kind of shackles you as well, right? I mean, the famous example is sort of Elon Musk, right? I mean, he obviously knows a lot, but he breaks everything down into first principles, which means that everything that's known about whatever business he chooses is, the sort of traditional teaching would say, okay, it's just sort of done this way. And you got to learn the way it's done this way. And, MBA is going to teach you, this is the type of, company you need to build. And these are the large companies and stuff. And he throws the biggest middle finger to that. And he's like, no, absolutely not. We need to do that. And he just kind of breaks it down to his own sort of version of an MBA. And, he's had the most successful companies that we know of. And that's across industries, right? I mean, so it's, he's doing SpaceX and, even his AI Grok for X is, leagues beyond anything that all the best AI engineers thought was possible just months ago. What he's able to do with, all the GPUs getting stacked together and stuff. And I mean, it's literally everything he chooses. If you break it down to first principles, I think part of that is that you kind of have to reject the traditional sort of teaching, whether it's MBA, whether it's sort of healthcare. And I think that's kind of a perspective that maybe formal teaching kind of, is not sort of, formal teaching is going to tell you to do it a certain way. And so that, I don't know if formal education sort of teaches you that. So that's why I think that's where the comment for startup versus a larger company was coming from. Or a larger company, they've gone through that startup phase. And, right now their main goal is sort of maintain, profitability, whatever it is, sort of maintain the ship. Startup is exactly the opposite of that, so that's not what's going to make you successful, because you can get crushed by the large companies.
Yeah,
just
you
by
have
design,
to take risks, you got to move fast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think the Quantic was like perfect for me, because it sort of introduces you to the subject, and that you don't know enough. It's not like Quantic is definitely not going to shoot you to the top of the list like Wharton would, just with name brand recognition. But I can kind of understand a little bit to where you could start to question things that need to be questioned, I feel like.
Yeah, Aaron, I wanted to comment on that timing that you said. I would say I completely agree with that. Like, if I did this MBA after med school, useless for me. After residency, useless. It had to be right at this time, like in my career, mid-career, where you've been into practice, seen the pitfalls, want to improve the situation in your hospital or globally. I don't think I would have been receptive to, or been appreciative and receptive to the information and been able to see the value of it, and apply it. I think the executive format is probably the best way to learn business for people who are not in finance and everything, because you really need to be in the work environment, figure out what your long-term goals are, what you're looking for, and then you can use that to help strategize the right way to do whatever goal you're trying to achieve. And completely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we laid out the pros and cons of the different programs pretty well. Anything that I'm leaving out, guys? Anything that we haven't, because we're at the hour now, so I just want to make sure. Any final thoughts about MBAs in general, or, anything, not even an MBA, could it be something else, a law degree, right? Sometimes I've heard of people doing that. Have you seen that be helpful? Maybe somebody who's trying to get, they're big into device and they realize a law degree might be more helpful for them.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. I mean, literally we said, Aaron, you don't have to have an MBA. The show, the topic is MBA, but it could be, that 20% could be anything that gets you engaged and motivated. Google has this famous thing where, they let you, your primary job is your 80%, and then you're paid for that 20% to tinker and do whatever. And the sort of the risk they take, or calculated the risk they take, is that, the engineers or software guys or whoever it is, that 20%, they're not going to, veer too far from their sort of primary area of interest, which is software development, right? So, and then they've come up with amazing innovations that have sort of catapulted us into the future. So I think you just have to sort of find that, and in all likelihood, you're going to find something in that 20% that's engaging in healthcare. You'll find, you unlock this amazing potential for yourself and for everybody out there. And that's what it's all about, right? I mean, you don't want to, at least I don't want to, do what I'm doing just as a job. You don't want to go into work and, take care of your few patients, come home, set their follow-ups. I mean, that's amazing, and that needs to be done, and that's what you've trained for. But part of the career part of it, the impact part of it, kind of like the upstream part of it, is, finding those opportunities within that system to make it better. And I think that's the part that truly is engaging. And whether that's, MD, JD, MD, MBA, all the other sort of, additional kind of disciplines that are out there, I think that's what's really sort of exciting about it.
Yeah, I I was gonna say it's along the similar lines. I think we have to look at whether like what people's goals are and what they want to achieve. Obviously, highly motivated individuals like yourselves are more than just want to just do clinical practice, right? You want to do something that is a little different, bigger, outside the box. And I think we always have to position yourself with the right tools to be able to grab hold of that opportunity when it comes by, because ever throughout our lives, we have these fleeting opportunities that we can latch onto. And, if you're not ready to receive those, take advantage, plan, and have the tools to execute that, I think, that's what is needed. So, I think it's all about figuring out like what your goals are, what you want to get out of. Because I know there's a lot of my colleagues who want to just do clinical medicine, and they want to do that. And that's great. And they have successful careers and make good salaries, and but then other people have some other, want to change it up, like I said, Raj, have some other different career path. And to me, I think that's, we all should have those diversified backgrounds so that we can take advantage of the fleeting opportunities that pass us every day and make sure we don't just let it go by. And
yeah, you're right. That is the crux of it. Is the three of us all know there are a lot of ideas out there, right? There's a lot of docs out there with great ideas, but they don't know how to execute. Sometimes we don't know how to execute, and that's the key. And so I think the MBA is just more tools in your toolbox to help you execute on a good idea or an opportunity, like you said, Roger. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is great. Can't wait to get this one out. And,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys are both on social media, right? In case anybody wants to reach out, we can add that to the show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, guys. So nice to meet you, Roger.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, DM us at BackTable Innovation on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. BackTable Innovation is produced and hosted by Brian Hartley,
Aaron Fritts,
Diana Velasquez Pimentel,
and Eric Amaker.
Our audio team is led by Kieran Gannon, with support from
Josh McWhirter,
Aaron Bowles,
Josh Spencer.
Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz.
Social media and PR by Ann Dang.
Administrative support provided by Jamila Kennebrew.
Thanks again for listening.
See you again next week.